What happens when a simple neighborly friendship turns into something no one expected? A quiet house, a lonely night, and one confession that changes everything. Are you ready to see what happens next? Watch carefully. This story isn't just about love. It's about desire, secrets, and the moments we can't ignore. I looked at him, standing there with that mix of frustration and longing carved into his features. And for a moment the room went impossibly still. The truth hung between us like something alive, something breathing. "You're scared," he whispered again, softer this time, as if he wasn't accusing me anymore, just understanding me. And he was right. I was scared. Scared of what I felt. Scared of what this could turn into. Scared because he wasn't a stranger. He was Liam, the boy from next door. The boy who used to mow our lawn for pocket money. The boy who grew into a man without me noticing until suddenly he wasn't a boy at all. I exhaled shakily and sank back into the couch, rubbing my palms together to ground myself. "Lem," I began, but the name trembled off my lips like it didn't know whether to come out as a warning or a plea. He stepped closer, not touching me, not crossing the last inch of distance between us, but near enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from his body. "You don't have to say it," he murmured. "I can see it in your eyes." My pulse kicked hard in my throat. "You don't know what you see," I whispered. "I do," he insisted, voice thick. "I've known for months. You try so hard to hide it, but I notice things. The way you look away when I get too close. The way your breath changes. The way your voice softens when you say my name." I clenched my jaw, fighting the heat rising in my chest. "Liam, this is wrong," I said, but the words sounded weak even to me. "Your mother trusts me. My husband. Your husband hasn't been home in months." His voice broke slightly on that last word, as if even saying it hurt him. "And my mother doesn't need to know anything." "No one does." I pushed up from the couch, desperate to break the spell his presence was casting over me. "This isn't about secrecy," I said, pacing toward the window just to get air. "This is about what it could do to us. To you, to me." He followed slowly, cautiously, like someone approaching a frightened animal. "I don't care if it complicates everything," he said quietly. "I care about how I feel when I'm near you. I care about what happens to you when you look at me like that." "Like what?" I whispered, hating how breathless I sounded. "Like you're trying to convince yourself you don't want me." I closed my eyes. Silence stretched between us. Thick, heavy, trembling around the edges. Then I felt him behind me. Not touching. Just standing close enough that the warmth of his breath brushed the back of my neck. "Tell me I'm wrong," he whispered. "Tell me you've never thought about me the way I think about you. Tell me you've never wondered what it would feel like if things were different." My fingers curled against the windowsill. I should have said it. I should have ended it right there. One simple lie, and everything would have slipped back into place. But the lie never came. Instead, a quiet, broken sound slipped from my throat, something like a confession I hadn't meant to give. Liam inhaled sharply, as if that tiny sound was all the answer he needed. "I knew it," he murmured. "I knew I wasn't imagining it." I turned around abruptly, my heartbeat wild, my voice trembling. "This can't happen," I insisted, even though the words felt like were crumbling apart as I spoke them. "No matter what either of us feels, this can't." "It already is," he whispered, eyes locked on mine. "Maybe nothing has happened yet, but it's happening every time we look at each other. Every time we talk. Every time the house gets too quiet and you feel lonely." His hand lifted, just an inch, as if he wanted to touch my cheek. But he stopped himself, letting it fall back to his side with a shaking breath. "I'm trying to respect you," he said softly. "I'm trying to give you space. But I'm drowning in this. And I don't know how long I can pretend I don't feel what I feel." My throat tightened. "Liam, please," I whispered. "Don't make this harder." He shook his head slowly. "I'm not trying to make it harder," he said. "I'm trying to be honest. Because I can't do this halfway. I can't smile at you in the hallway and pretend I'm not falling apart inside." A single tear slid down my cheek before I even realized it had formed. He noticed instantly. His voice softened, broke, gentled in a way that made my knees weaken. "Please don't cry," he whispered. "I never wanted to hurt you." "I'm not hurt," I said shakily. I'm overwhelmed. He nodded, stepping back slightly, giving me breathing room. Even his own breath sounded unsteady. Then tell me what you want me to do, he said quietly. Do you want me to stay away, leave you alone, move back to my mother's house, avoid you completely? His voice cracked. Just say the word, and I'll disappear if that's what you need. I stared at him. This man who had once been a boy running barefoot across the lawn, who now stood in my living room, offering walk away from everything just because he cared that deeply. I opened my mouth, but no words came, because the truth was terrifying. I didn't want him to disappear. Not even a little. And he saw it. He felt it. He breathed it in like it was the only thing keeping him alive. Tell me, he whispered again. What do you want me to do? The house was silent. My heartbeat wasn't. My voice, when it finally came out, was softer than the moonlight filtering through the window. Liam. I swallowed hard. I don't know. He closed his eyes, exhaling a slow, trembling breath. Then, he whispered, opening them again to look at me with that aching intensity. Let me stay, just a little longer. And for the first time that night, I didn't say no. He stayed where he was. Close enough that I could feel the warmth of him. Far enough that he wasn't crossing a line unless I let him. The air between us felt electric, fragile, trembling with everything we weren't supposed to feel. Just sit with me, I whispered, barely recognizing my own voice. Liam's expression softened, something like relief flickering through his eyes. He moved slowly, carefully, as if the moment might shatter if he breathed too loudly. He sat on the edge of the couch, leaving space between us, but his presence still wrapped around me like a quiet storm. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The clock on the wall ticked softly. The rain outside tapped against the windows, and the silence between us was full, heavy but strangely comforting. I sank into the cushion beside him, pulling my legs up slightly, drawing a steadying breath. You make everything complicated, I whispered. He gave a small, helpless laugh. I'm trying not to. I'm trying. My head toward him, studying his face in the dim lamplight. He didn't look like the kid from next door anymore. He hadn't in a long time. His jaw was tense, his eyes soft in a way that made my heart ache. Why did you come over tonight? I asked quietly. Really? He hesitated, chewing at the inside of his cheek before answering. Because I couldn't stop thinking about you, he said, and I got tired of pretending I could. I swallowed hard. That's not fair to either of us, I whispered. I know, he said, voice low, but lying to myself felt worse. His honesty cut through me in a way I wasn't prepared for. You should be with someone your age, I murmured. Someone who doesn't have to think twice before wanting you. Someone who doesn't. Someone who isn't you, he finished softly. I looked down at my hands. Less. He leaned forward slightly, elbows on his knees, rubbing his palms together as if he were trying to warm them. But I don't want someone else, he said. I want the woman who gave me advice when I was lost. The woman who brought me soup when I was sick. The woman who talks to me like my thoughts matter. His voice dropped, softer. The woman who makes me feel alive even on my worst days. My breath hitched. Lime, you don't know what you're saying. He turned his head toward me, and his eyes, God, those eyes, held something tender, something solid. I know exactly what I'm saying, he whispered. I want you. My heartbeat thudded painfully against my ribs. Stop, I said. But it wasn't sharp, it wasn't strong, it was barely a plea. Please don't say things like that. Why? He asked gently. Because I mean them. Or because part of you wishes you didn't want to hear them. I closed my eyes. He was too perceptive. Too honest. Too much. I'm older than you, I managed. He gave a faint smile. I'm not a kid. I'm married, I said next, the words tasting strange and heavy in my mouth. Even if Thomas is away, even if things are distant between us, I'm still. You're lonely? Liam said quietly. And you're hurting. And you're trying so hard to hide it that it's breaking you in ways you won't admit. My eyes snapped open. That's not true. He didn't argue. He didn't push. He just watched me with that quiet, heartbreaking gentleness that made me want to look away and lean closer at the same time. Can I ask you something? He softly nodded. When you look at me. His throat bobbed as he swallowed. Does it scare you because it feels wrong, or because it feels right? My breath left my body in a slow, trembling rush. He wasn't forcing anything. He wasn't even touching me. He was just telling the truth and asking for mine. I don't know, I whispered. He nodded slowly, accepting that answer, even though it seemed to tear at him a little. It's okay, he said in a low voice. You don't have to know. You don't have to decide anything tonight. I stared at him, confused. Then why are you here? He lifted his gaze, and the vulnerability there nearly shattered me. Because I care about you, he said. More than I should. More than I'd planned to. And even if nothing ever happens, I needed you to know. Silence swallowed the room. He leaned back on the couch, hands clasped, not touching me. Not pushing, just there. Tell me if you want me to leave, he whispered. I opened my mouth, but the words caught on my tongue. Because the truth was simple, terrifying, undeniable. I don't want you to leave. I breathed. His eyes softened instantly. Hope flickering through the sadness, through the restraint, through everything he'd been holding back. Okay, he whispered. I'll stay. Not closer, not touching, just there. And somehow, that felt more dangerous and more comforting than anything else. I didn't even realize I was holding my breath until he stepped closer again. Just a little, just enough for me to feel the warmth of him. It was ridiculous how aware I suddenly was of everything. The faint scent of rain on his clothes, the soft rasp of his breathing, the way his fingers flexed at his sides like he didn't know what to do with them, but stopping wasn't an option either. Can I sit for a minute? He asked quietly. I nodded, and he sank into the chair across from me, elbows on his knees, eyes fixed on the floor for a moment before drifting back up to me. And there was something in those eyes. Something searching, something asking for a kind understanding he didn't know how to request out loud. You know, he said softly, I didn't come here to bother you. I came because you're the only person who ever made this place feel less empty. The words hit harder than he probably expected. Maybe harder than he intended. But he kept going. I see you, he said, not the version people expect. The real you. The tired you. The strong you. The woman who holds everyone else together, but never says when she's the one falling apart. My hand tightened around the edge of the table without meaning to. I wasn't used to being seen that clearly. Not anymore. He noticed. Of course he noticed. He leaned forward a little, voice dropping lower, calmer, like he wasn't trying to impress or convince. Just tell the truth he'd been carrying for far too long. I'm not a kid, he murmured. Not to you, not to anyone. I know what I feel, and I'm not saying it to make things difficult. I just needed you to know. There it was. The air shifted, thickened, and for a moment the room felt too small for both of us. Not in a suffocating way. More like the world had narrowed to a single point between us, a point neither of us had chosen but neither of us could ignore anymore. I looked at him, really looked at him. And suddenly the memory of him from years ago flashed in my mind. The quiet boy next door, who used to help his mother bring in groceries. Now sitting in front of me as a grown man with shoulders he'd earned, a voice that carried weight, and eyes that held far more understanding than anyone gave him credit for. You shouldn't say things like that, I whispered. He smiled, soft, almost sad. I shouldn't, but I meant every word. Something inside me trembled. Not fear, not guilt. Something far more dangerous, far more honest. The realization that part of me had been waiting to hear something like that. Not from him specifically, but from someone who saw me as a woman again, not a role, not a caretaker, not a neighbor doing her best to stay composed. He reached out then, not touching me, just placing his hand near mine, close enough that the warmth curled around my skin like a question. I don't expect anything from you, he said. I just couldn't keep pretending I didn't feel something when I looked at you. My pulse skipped, traitorously loud in my own ears. And what is it you feel? I asked, even though I shouldn't have asked anything at all. He lifted his eyes. That you deserve more than the loneliness you've been carrying. And if you ever let me, even for a moment, I'd prove it. The room went silent, and the silence said everything. He didn't move his hand any closer, but somehow it felt like he had. That tiny space between our fingers felt charged, alive, like a line drawn in warm air that neither of us dared to cross but neither of us could look away from. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat, in my fingertips, in that quiet, breathless space between us. "You talk like you know me," I whispered, not sure if I meant it as a challenge or a confession. He shifted slightly, lifting his chin just enough to meet my eyes without flinching. "I do," he said. "More than you think." I almost laughed at that, not because it was funny, but because it was dangerously close to the truth. He had been around enough, seen enough, quietly observed the pieces of me I thought nobody noticed. The exhaustion, the strength, the nights when I pretended not to hear the silence pressing too loud against the walls. "What exactly is it that you think you know?" I asked, even though my voice betrayed me with a softness I didn't intend. He exhaled slowly, like he'd been waiting for that question. "I know you've been carrying too much alone," he said. "For too long. I know you put everyone else first until you forget you're human too. I know you sit by that window, at night when you think no one is watching, like you're looking for something you won't admit you want." My breath caught. He noticed that too. He leaned in, not enough to touch, just enough to let his presence fold around me like warm air. "And I know," he said quietly, "that you don't get talked to like this. Not anymore. Not by someone who actually sees you." My throat tightened, and for a moment I had no words at all. No one had spoken to me like that in years. Not gently. Not honestly. Not with that kind of certainty. "You shouldn't watch me like that," I murmured. He shook his head slowly. "I don't watch you," he said. "I notice you. There's a difference." The way he said it made heat rush through me, a soft, slow bloom I tried to ignore but couldn't. "And what do you think noticing me is going to do for either of us?" I asked, trying to steady my breath. He gave a faint smile, not smug, not bold, just unbearably sincere. "I don't know," he said. But for the first time in a long time, I wanted to say something instead of letting the moment pass. He paused, eyes searching mine with quiet intensity. "If this is too much, tell me," he whispered. "I'll stop. I don't want to make you uncomfortable." And the strange part was, I wasn't uncomfortable. I was startled, intrigued, awake in a way I hadn't been in a very long time. I looked at his hand, still close to mine, still not touching. And I felt a pull I didn't want to admit out loud. "You're not making me uncomfortable," I said softly. His breath hitched, the smallest sound, but it said everything. "Then tell me what you want me to do," he murmured. My pulse throbbed in my ears. "I don't know," I whispered, though the truth was I knew exactly what I didn't dare to say. He leaned just a fraction closer, voice low and warm enough to unravel something inside me. "Then maybe," he said slowly, "we let the moment tell us." The room felt smaller again. The silence thickened, and I felt the world tilt, just slightly, toward him. He didn't touch me, but God, it felt like he did. That tiny shift in his voice, that warm edge in his breath, it slid over my skin like a quiet reminder that I wasn't invisible. Not to him, not in this moment. I could feel him waiting, not impatient, not demanding, just present. So present it made the air feel heavier around us. "What moment?" I asked, barely above a whisper. He smiled softly, the kind of smile that didn't try to charm. It simply understood. "The one where you finally let yourself feel something," he murmured. "For once." I looked away for a second, not because I wanted distance, but because everything inside me suddenly felt too exposed, too real. "I don't know if I should," I said quietly. "I know," he replied. "But wanting and should aren't always the same thing." His voice was a gentle pull, low and steady, like he was afraid to break whatever delicate thread had formed between us. A thread neither of us intended, yet somehow both of us kept holding. He lifted his hand then, just slightly, and for a breathless second I thought he might finally touch me. But he didn't. He let his hand hover in that small space, warm, open, patient. "I'm not asking you to choose anything," he said. "I'm not asking you to cross any line. I just don't want you to keep pretending you don't feel the weight of being alone." His eyes softened, and there was something in them I hadn't seen in a long, long time. Not desire, not infatuation, tenderness. Real tenderness. "You deserve someone who sees you," he said. "Someone who listens. Someone who doesn't make you shrink yourself just to be understood." My throat tightened. "You think that's you?" I asked, not challenging him, just trying to understand why he was saying all this. I think, he said slowly, I'd like the chance to try. My heart skipped, traitorously, before I could stop it. He leaned in just a little, enough that I could feel the warmth of him wrap around my breath. If you tell me to step back, he whispered, I will. And if I don't? I asked, voice trembling in a way I hoped he didn't notice. But he noticed. He noticed everything. Then I'll stay here, he breathed. Right where you let me, not a step closer unless you want me there. His patience felt more dangerous than anything else. His restraint. His quietness. His certainty. And something hidden. Something tired. Something that had gone silent for too many years. Opened just enough to speak. You don't even know what you're asking for, I whispered. He shook his head gently. I'm not asking for anything, he said. I'm offering something. He met my eyes without looking away. A moment where you don't have to be strong. The words melted straight into me, disarming me completely. And before I could respond, he shifted. Not toward me, but just enough to show he was ready to step back if I said a single word. Tell me what you want, he murmured. Just this once. I'll follow your lead. The room felt like it held its breath, and for the first time in a long time, so did I.